Hello everybody, welcome back to the CAS Talks. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, we've just watched the extremely high-level grand opening of the Climate Adaptation Summit 2021. It was there were leaders from all across the world. It was more a case of who wasn't there. So I think that was a very impressive way to kick off the summit. During this CAS talk, we're going to be reflecting on what happened. We're also going to be looking forward at what are the actionable points that came out of that, because a lot of promises were made, and now we need to make sure we know what needs to be in place to actually ensure that they're fulfilled. We'll be officially launching the Race to Resilience. And we'll look ahead to a few more upcoming events of the Climate Adaptation Summit 2021. It's a packed program, so don't even think of clicking away. Better still, get in touch with us. Use the chat function on the CAS platform and use our Twitter hashtag, which is, Vicky, what is it?
It is #Adaptation Summit.
Exactly, Adaptation Summit hashtag. And remember, compliments to me, complaints to Vicky, please, okay?
Uh-oh,
keep it that
not
way.
again.
Okay, before we go on, I have two guests, Vicky and another guest who I'd like to introduce shortly. But before we do that, let's have a look at a video wrap-up of that opening session. Oh, I'm just hearing that the video wrap-up is not actually ready yet, so we're going to move straight on, but I promise we'll get to it. So, just keep your seatbelts on for the moment. Mr. Siebesma, Mr. Feike Siebesma, thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Good. You said correct. Okay, I've passed the first test. I got your name right.
Absolutely.
That's a good start. You're the honorary CEO of DSM, and you're also the chair of the Global Center on Adaptation.
Correct.
What were your impressions of the high-level opening that we just watched?
I think very good, because the governmental leaders, they showed clearly, collectively, that they get it. Mm-hmm. That they get it, that climate change is impacting our life. We anchored our approach in the Paris Treaty, how to mitigate climate change. In the meantime, we're not fully on track. In the meantime, climate change is continuing to impact the life of many, and especially the most vulnerable. Mm. And in order to not only to focus on mitigation, but also to address the impact already today, we need to adapt as well. And like Prime Minister Rutte during the conference, and several governmental leaders repeated that, said maybe we should split the total financing between mitigation and adaptation in a 50-50 way. And that means that there is a strong commitment for adaptation. And I think the developing countries would really want us to do that, the developed world as well. So what we try to do is develop best practices that they can use, that they can roll out. And if you live in Ethiopia or Bangladesh or one of the island states, you need the adaptation tools desperately right now.
Yeah. There's no time to waste. And Vicky, what about you as a youth reporter at large? Was there something that struck you in particular?
Yeah, there was one quote, and I have it written down, so I just will just read it out loud. Young people have done the least to contribute to climate change, yet they will suffer the most. Yeah. And this quote is from Nana Akufo-Addo, so he's the president of Ghana. Mm-hmm. And I think it sums it really good up, like what we as young people experience. And I think it's an acknowledgement for all the young people. We really want to, do our best to contribute to the climate adaptation. Yeah. I think this is a good quote.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree with you, and it's good you mentioned that quote, and that means also, per definition, that this generation has a responsibility as well, not only to have a good life themselves, but to take care of the next generation. And that's basically what the quote says.
Definitely. Yeah. And one thing I just enjoy, because I love the moments when the leaders show a bit more of their human side, they're not just reading from pre-prepared statements, was just the joy at the US re-engagement with the climate community. The president of the IMF mentioned it, and then I saw Antonio Gutierrez chuckling to himself. Everyone is just so happy to have the US on board, so that was great. Okay, I'm assured that we do now have the video wrap-up, so let's run that to give you guys a better flavor of what happened if you didn't watch.
During the summit, public and private sector partners from all over the world will present solutions, actions and best practices on resilient infrastructure, on delta development, on food security, on resilient cities and disaster risk management. And there will be a special focus on the leadership of youth and the adaptive capacity of the African continent.
We need to start building a better future now. The Paris Agreement recognized that mitigation and adaptation go hand in hand, that they are two equally important building blocks towards a sustainable world that leaves no one behind. Over the past 2 years, the Global Commission on Adaptation has worked hard to elevate the importance of climate adaptation.
We need the trillions of taxpayers' dollars funding the recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic to jumpstart the low-carbon, high-resilience future we need.
Young people have done the least to cause climate change, and yet will suffer its impact the most. Across Africa, the continent with the world's youngest population, we must scale up the solutions that deliver green jobs and resilient livelihoods.
Adaptation is not an option. It's an urgent task for the benefit of this generation and those to come.
I'm today launching an all-new Adaptation Action Coalition, which is a joint effort between the UK, Bangladesh, Egypt, Malawi, the Netherlands, St. Lucia, and the United Nations. So, let 2021 be the year that we fight back, not just against climate change, but the effects of climate change that are already being felt.
If we take care of Mother Earth, she will continue to nurture us. This sentiment should guide our way forward.
C'est pourquoi il nous faut, dans l'esprit de l'accord de Paris, faire preuve d'ambition et de solidarité. Il en va de notre responsabilité à tous et de notre responsabilité à chacun. Mais il est tout aussi important d'accélérer la mise en œuvre d'actions d'adaptation sur le terrain afin de réduire la vulnérabilité de nos sociétés.
我们要树立你中有我，我中有你的命运共同体意识，坚持多边主义，开展适应气候变化国际合作。
President Biden has made fighting climate change a top priority of his administration. We have a president now, thank God, who leads, tells the truth, and is seized by this issue. And President Biden knows that we have to mobilize in unprecedented ways to meet a challenge that is fast accelerating. And he knows we have limited time to get it under control.
Climate resilience is a critical priority. And this is why we place it at the heart of what we do this year and in years to come.
With the GCA as the AAI leads coordination partner, GCA will work to implement the vision and roadmaps of the AAI.
The World Bank Group plans to invest over $5 billion over the next 5 years to improve livelihoods and restore degradation. This investment is a major contribution to the Great Green Wall.
We welcome the launch of a new Young Leadership Program to bring together the next generation of leaders to help tackle climate change. So thank you to everyone for joining us in this fight, and thank you to the young people for stepping up and getting involved. Together, we will build a cleaner, safer, and more competitive world.
We're pushing for a revolution in planning by providing technical guidelines, assistance, and capacity building to local governments to incorporate adaptation actions in their strategic and territorial planning process. In the spirit of the Article 2.1c of the Paris Agreement, we are driving a revolution in financing by designing a funding strategy to scale up adaptation actions on the ground.
We are promoting locally led adaptation that can bring forth tangible solution for the vulnerable communities in different countries of the world.
And I expect that the Global Center for Adaptation, Africa, hosted by the African Development Bank, will be a key partner in this particular endeavor.
My late mentor, Kofi Annan, the former UN Secretary General as well, once told me, the only promises that matter are the promises kept. Let's turn words into action, hope into reality, promises into financing for Africa.
That was definitely a quote that stayed with me as well. The only promises that matter are the promises that are kept. We've heard a lot from leaders around the world then. Let's look at the private sector because they have also made a lot of promises. In your experience, Mr. Siebesma, why is it so important, first of all, to get the private sector on board when it comes to climate adaptation?
Private sector need to take its responsibility in mitigation as well as adaptation. In mitigation, the private sector need to fill its part of the Paris Treaty, and that is science-based targets, reduction targets, being transparent about climate-related matters influencing you, preparing on a price on carbon and even embracing all those policies. That is where the private sector needs to be on the mitigation side. On the adaptation side, it's also the private sector's responsibility to take care of the most vulnerable states or the most vulnerable countries or the most vulnerable generation on climate change, and therefore we need to adapt. The private sector can do that also in its own interest, to protect its own supply chains,
yes.
To grow economically. If we address climate change via adaptation, we can achieve 0.7% at extra GDP growth globally. We can provide jobs, millions of jobs. So it's in their own interest, but I think it's a moral responsibility as well. And listen, business never developed, the economy never developed for making money. The economy started as a barter trade. You do better this, I do this, and we exchange goods. And we need money as a facilitating tool. That is the way the economy has been growing, should grow, and need to continue. So automatically, if you use that economic model, it is just a responsibility for the private sector to contribute as well.
I think I completely agree. I think if everyone had been doing that, though, we wouldn't be in the mess that we are now. So some people are not doing that. You've made it a personal cause, I think that's fair to say, to champion faster, accelerated change to help the climate. Is that what it takes to get the private sector more on board, leaders to really have a kind of a change of mindset?
For me it is a combination. I couldn't run a company by only focusing on the shareholders' value or only focusing on making money and not for the next generation or not for the planet or not for societies. I could not look into the mirror doing that. But increasingly, doing well, doing good, can go hand in hand together. Doing well as a company, but doing good for the world. And what we did in our company is transform our company, focus more our businesses, our innovation on addressing the SDGs. Also in the belief that on the long run, the world is not stupid. Maybe on the short term, sometimes we make stupid mistakes, but on the longer run, we will correct ourselves and we will address the SDGs. And therefore, if you find the solutions addressing the SDGs with better nutrition or better oceans or addressing climate change, at the end there is a business model as well. People will pay for it, the world will pay for it, because the world wants to make the world a good place to live for many people, for all people. So it makes good business sense. And for me, it is just a logical moral obligation as well.
Yeah. And about that business sense and the moral obligation, was it always like that for you? Or was there a moment that kind of triggered a change, a personal moment that triggered a change in mindset?
It started early in my career, and I had the advantage that I made very fast career in this company, and DSM, and a predecessor company. And I thought in the beginning, I thought, that's good, making career. And then I thought, hey, you have the impact on 10, on 100, on 1,000, on 10,000s of people. And I asked myself, if you have impact, and what are you going to do with it? And I asked that question to myself at a young age, and I thought, hey, if you have the ability to have an impact, you need to show the responsibility as well to do something meaningful, purposeful with that impact. So, and that influenced the way I would like to lead. I led our company, changed it, and trying to contribute to society.
Great.
And some people, when I was annoyed, sometimes the people said, but what is your real agenda behind it? I said, this is my real agenda. No, what is the hidden agenda? I said, I want to contribute to a better world. Yeah, but you're a businessman. And then I say, it's not that after high school, all the people without a heart went to business. That's not true. There are very good business people who have a heart as well and want to contribute to a better world.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much for that. And you're going to stay with us throughout the session today, so we'll be hearing more about that. Okay, for all of our viewers who didn't manage to watch the high-level opening, rest assured that you can watch everything back by heading to the CAS platform, and that'll be available in 4 hours' time. And you can also watch the high-level opening on the different social media channels as well. Check out the YouTube channel. Okay, next up, before we hear from our next guests who are joining us via video, we have a video message from Secretary General of the Global Commission on Adaptation, His Excellency Mr. Ban Ki-moon, who was in the opening session, as you saw there, and he provided a keynote address on the subject of this CAS talk as well, and why we need a race to resilience.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure to speak to you today. We have seen over the last year how the COVID-19 pandemic has collided with climate shocks to create a set of cascading risks. Evacuating populations from the path of cyclones and hurricanes incurred the threat of contagion. Borders closed, threatening supply chains and increasing the risk of greater hunger in Africa. And as the state and trends in climate adaptation report shows, funding for climate change adaptation was cut back, halting the progress achieved so far in building climate resilience. Curtailing our ability to deal with future climate shocks. When I initiated the Paris Agreement on climate change 5 years ago, I put adaptation on an equal footing with mitigation because they go hand in hand. They are our peace pact with the planet. There is no plan B because there isn't a planet B. Climate change acts as a risk multiplier across all sectors. But the converse is also true. The more resilient we are to climate shocks, the better we will be able to deal